And just to introduce myself, so yeah, my name is Niamh and I am the Planning Policy and Campaigns Officer at Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, and will be co-presenting this webinar. And Lorna, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself as well quickly.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Lorna and I'm the Policy and Advocacy Officer at the Trust. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Cool. So just to get us started, I thought I would run through a little bit of housekeeping. So just so that you're all aware, the session is being recorded and will be shared on our website afterwards. But any names and details will be redacted, so you don't need to worry about that. We have got the camera and microphone function disabled, but you can pop any messages you like into the chat. And if you have any questions, then you can put those in there. We'll try and answer the questions throughout, but we'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. And so we're hoping for this to be a 30-minute session, and then at the end leave some space for questions and answers. But yeah, do feel free to pop some questions in the chat as you go if you like, and we'll try and answer them as we go. But also wanted to just say that we want to keep this webinar as a safe, respectful and inclusive space. So we recognise that people will come with wide range of political views and experiences, but this is supposed to be educational, focusing on the key changes in politics and policy and how to influence decision makers to prioritise nature and the environment. So it's not about political parties or party politics, but meant to be just sort of educational and to inform you on how to prioritise nature. So as I say, yeah, pop any questions into the chat and we'll go over sort of specific a dedicated question time at the end. But thank you all for being here. So we'll get sort of started on the sort of main content now. So just wanted to run through some of the changes that are happening in local politics and why this vote is particularly important. So I thought I'd just run through very basics of the difference between a local election and a general election. I'm sure that's probably obvious to a lot of people, but we want to just sort of run through that anyway. So obviously local elections will decide who runs local councils, making decisions about everyday services like planning, housing, waste collection, transport, local nature and green spaces. And that's how policy are applied locally that have a direct impact on communities. And obviously general elections decide who forms the national government, setting UK-wide laws, budgets, national policy on issues like the economy, energy, health, defence and the environment. So local elections is who makes the decisions on where you live, and general elections is about decisions for the whole country, but the two can influence each other. And so, yeah. And far fewer people vote in a local election, so that means that your vote carries a lot more power. And also with the local government reorganisation, devolution and a combined county authority, a lot of the decisions that you'll be making in the elections coming up this May will influence sort of longer term, once in a generational shifts in politics, which I will run through in just a second. So this vote is particularly important as it will be having a knock-on impact on wider decisions that are upcoming over the next couple of years. So local government reorganisation. So in 2024, Hampshire, Southampton, Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight, as the upper tier councils, asked central government for more local decision-making powers. And in March this year, the government announced a move to a simpler system of local government with 5 new unitary councils, replacing the current 15 county, district and borough and unitary councils across Hampshire, Southampton, Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight. And so each new council will be responsible for delivering all of the local services in the area. And so these are going to be 4 new unitary councils on the mainland of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, so that will make a 5th one. So as you can see, the white boundaries in this image is where the current councils exist, and they're going to be shifting to the 5 by those sort of 5 colours, so the pink, green, yellow, blue and white areas. And so what this means is that instead of having 2 tiers, so at the moment there's a county council and district council in Hampshire and delivering some services, there's going to be 1 council that will be responsible for everything. And this is meant to be making services simpler to access, more joined up and a bit easier for people to understand. And these new councils are due to be up and running from the 1st of April 2028, with the elections for these new councils taking place next May 2027. So you'll be voting for the local elections, which will be where these sort of white bordered areas are, and for your existing councils, which will then be dissolved down the line. And these new 5 councils will have their elections next year in 2027. And this is all going to be overseen by the Hampshire and Solent Combined County Authority. So the smaller boundaries are going to be combined to create these five councils, and then that's going to be overseen by a combined county authority, which I will just go into now. So as you can see, the combined county authority will cover the whole of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight area. So in February 2025, last year, this whole area was accepted in the Devolution Priority Programme. So that means that some powers and funding will be moving from central government to the new Hampshire and Solent Combined County Authority, which covers the whole county of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So this is a process of giving more powers to regions across England, and the government is also aiming to make powers devolved to combined authorities consistent. So that means that more decisions and spending will be determined locally rather than by central government. So that means that for our region, decisions should be made closer to home and hopefully by people that understand local needs and being able to empower communities. So this is why we need leaders with a strong ambition for nature, because nature underpins everything from our health, well-being, the economy, climate change mitigation, resilient communities, and we want to see nature woven into strategic priorities across the region. So this combined county authority is already established, it's had its CEO appointed, and it's currently being shaped by the upper tier councils, so Southampton, Portsmouth, Hampshire County Council and the Isle of Wight. And those leaders will sit on the Hampshire and Solent Combined County Authority board, along with other regional representatives. So they're going to be having their inaugural board meeting this June. And then from 2028, there will be a mayor that will be overseeing that combined authority. So who you elect now can influence how nature is included in decisions that will affect decisions made across the entire region. So just to sort of put that into a little bit of a timeline, the local elections are taking place this May, and then this summer the Hampshire and Solent Combined County Authority will have its inaugural meeting and will have devolved powers, and then in May 2027 the unitary council elections, so that's these elections, will be taking place, and then by May 2028 those councils that are in place at the moment will be completely dissolved, replaced by these councils, and there'll be a mayor elected who will be overseeing the Hampshire and Solent Combined County Authority. So that's the timeline of changes. So I thought I'd map that out so you can see how the elections taking place this May is going to be influencing decisions that are made strategically and how nature is involved in that over the next few years. To you, Lorna.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a great overview. Thank you. So yeah, to look a little bit at the national picture and some recent policy changes in the last couple of years is important to understanding how we've seen some environmental regression, and then that really shows how important these local elections are and how electing champions for nature locally can stand up against some of these things coming through, which are a little bit concerning, and roll back some of our nature protections. So of course, starting with the Planning and Infrastructure Act, which if you've been following us, I'm sure you're very aware of us talking about over the last year or so. The Act has now been passed, and Natural England are working to develop some of the first environmental delivery plans. So these plans allow developers to discharge their environmental obligations by paying into a fund. So this means developers won't have to do things like site level assessments or like on-site mitigations if they choose to use the plan instead. So this is actually relevant for local authorities too, because who you elect in this election will be able to influence the environmental delivery plans as they're created, take part in public consultations and champion nature to Natural England in creating these plans. And they'll also be responsible for working with Natural England and other local partners in delivering the conservation measures outlined in these plans. So yeah, having the councillors that can really champion nature in the implementation of these plans will be a great thing to have locally. There's also the local nature recovery strategies. So both Hampshire and the Isle of Wight have now published their local nature recovery strategies, and the councillors we elect at this election will play a great role in embedding the priorities of the local nature recovery strategies, and sort of making sure those maps of priority areas for nature are put into practice and into policy going forward, which was, of course, really important to do now, so that when the new unitary authorities come in, the local nature recovery strategy should already be embedded in local planning policy. And we've also recently had a consultation on the National Planning Policy Framework. You may have taken part in our recent e-action, which focused on chalk streams, but the National Planning Policy Framework addresses far more than just that. It also influences plan making and decision making on planning matters for local authorities. So having local councillors who can push back on planning policies that may be damaging and go for more ambitious than minimum standards is really important for prioritising nature's recovery. And yeah, just another reason why getting councillors in who can champion nature is so important at this election. I think I'm passing back over to Niamh.
So some other policy changes we've seen, I'm covering the right-hand side of the slide, is the land use framework. So the government's created a land use framework which aims to address competing demands on land resources. So it recognises that England is one of the most nature depleted countries in the world, and that land is needed for nature recovery, but alongside housing, food and energy. And so whilst this is great in a lot of ways, it's non-statutory guidance. So unless it aligns with planning systems, ambitions risk being diluted at a local level. So again, we really want councillors who can make sure that nature is being protected and that land is dedicated for nature. And there's been some updates regarding biodiversity net gain, or BNG. So this became mandatory in 2024 with the aim of that development will leave nature at least 10% better than before. But last week, the government has announced changes on how BNG will operate. So from July this year, developments on sites under 0.2 hectares will be exempt from biodiversity net gain, which the government estimates will exempt around 50% of residential planning permissions that were previously required to support biodiversity net gain. And they're also consulting to consider further exemptions for brownfield sites, so sites that have been previously developed, to help accelerate housing delivery, despite the fact that these sites are often incredibly important for rare species. So this matters locally because most planning decisions are for small and medium sites, and many of them will still support wildlife and green spaces for community. So when they're exempt, the cumulative loss of nature adds up quite quickly. And then there's also an increased reliance on off-site compensation rather than protecting nature where development happens. And so whilst that does have its role, it doesn't replace the everyday benefits of nature close to where people live. So biodiversity net gain is an amazing policy, but the recent changes risk weakening what it delivers on the ground. And the local challenge now is ensuring that development still contributes to nature-rich, healthy and resilient places. So we're pushing for 20% biodiversity net gain locally and reject the idea of exemptions for smaller developments, because we want to see developments that give back to nature. And then also the nuclear regulatory review. So there is a recent review of nuclear regulation that proposed a radical reset to try and accelerate nuclear development. And the review had no environmental specialists on the panel, but it made some seriously concerning recommendations that risked environmental protections. So the government held back from the worst case scenario, so they didn't accept all the recommendations in full, but there are changes that are being taken forward that risk threatening wildlife and nature. So that includes how the habitats regulations are applied, changes to environmental impact assessments, reforms on what is deemed legitimate in legal challenge, and constraints on the duties to protect designated landscapes, specifically for nationally significant infrastructure projects. And at the same time, we're increasingly relying on financial compensation for nature's destruction rather than avoiding damage in the first place. So in combination, these shifts risk weakening the systems that protect nature and create a riskier future. And the Prime Minister, when the nuclear regulatory review came through, was expressing an interest in rolling out these recommendations across the industrial strategy. So whilst these some national changes, the impact of these will be absorbed locally where development happens and how nature is treated in those places. So there's a change in the national picture, but then the impacts of that will be felt locally. So over to our call to action. So we're calling on current and future councillors to take nature's recovery seriously, and if elected, we're asking current councillors or prospective councillors to cover these six key areas. So what their plan is for nature's recovery, ensuring development is good for people and nature, taking local action to improve the state of our rivers, invest in nature-based solutions, support Team Wilder and empower communities to take action, and champion nature in local government reorganisation. And so you can find out who your candidates are via Who Can I Vote For. You can find an email template on our website, and then obviously on the 7th of May, Vote for Nature. So I thought I would just sort of walk you through that website and just show you what it looks like, because hopefully that is helpful. I will just come out of this presentation a second and we'll show you. This one, yes. Can you see? Maybe Lorna, can you tell me if you can see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, fab. Good news. So I'll just go back. So I've just popped in where our office is based, and then you can put your postcode into that website, whatever your postcode is, and then it just shows you what the elections are in your area when you visit whocanivotefor.co.uk. So in this area where we are now, there's 2 elections taking place, the Hampshire County Council, and so you can see all of the candidates that are running for the county council elections, but also the local government as well, which is Winchester, where we're based here. And again, you can see all of the candidates that are based there, and you can open up their profiles, and then as you can see, there's their social media profiles, their email addresses. And so what we're encouraging people to do is to write to their candidates, and on our website you can see more details on what these specific asks are and how they can prioritize nature, and then based on the feedback that you get from the candidates, then vote with nature in mind, and you can use that to hold them to account. So I thought I would just show you what that website looks like and how you can explore the candidates. And there's also information on there, including their statements and manifestos. So yeah, let's just stop sharing that and then go back to the slides. Whiz through these. And then just wanted to run through who can vote in a local government election. So you must be registered to vote. Today is the last day for registering to vote. So if you're not already registered, then please do so. You must be 18 or over in England before or on the day of the election. registered with an address in an area you want to vote in and not be legally excluded. But you can vote if you're a British citizen or an Irish citizen, but also if you're not a British citizen, but you have permission to enter or stay in the UK, or you don't need permission, plus you're either a Commonwealth citizen, citizen of Denmark, Luxembourg, Poland, Portugal or Spain, or from another EU country if you had permission or didn't need permission since the 31st of December 2020, and this has continued without a break, you're also eligible to vote. So if you are unsure whether you're eligible to vote or not, if you're not a British citizen, you can double check your eligibility via the government website or via canivote.org.uk, which is just there. Handing back to Lorna.
Thank you. And we just thought we'd highlight some key dates for you for the upcoming local elections. So as Niamh just mentioned, today is the deadline to register to vote. So you have till midnight if you're not already registered, and that link is in the chat. The deadline to register for a postal vote is tomorrow, also at midnight. So do make sure to do that soon if you intend to submit a postal vote. If you need to vote by proxy, or if you need to apply for a voter authority certificate, which is a form of photo ID if you don't have another type of photo ID like a passport or a driver's license, you can apply for that, and the deadline for that is the 28th of April. There is a full list on the government website for different types of ID that are valid, so do remember to bring photo ID along with you when you vote, and I will stick that link in the chat now so you can make sure you have the right ID with you on the day and don't have to run between your house and the polling station.
And we've whizzed through that those slides. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And we thought we'd just open up for if anyone had any questions.